Ever hear a hospital lose power and keep breathing anyway? Most people don't. Most people think the lights flicker, the backup kicks in, and that's that. They have no idea that somewhere in a basement nobody visits, there's a system deciding which machines live and which ones wait. I built that system. And at 9:50 on a Thursday morning in October, I sat in the parking structure of Meridian Valley Medical Center in my old Tahoe, watching a screen tell me that the $4 million modernization rollout the new CEO had bragged about for 6 months had just frozen solid in front of a room full of state health inspectors. It didn't crash. That's the thing people get wrong about good systems. They don't crash. They go still, polite. Like a soldier who's been given a stupid order and just stops, stands at attention and refuses to move another inch. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. Let me back up to 8:20 that morning when a man half my age fired me in a conference room with a fruit tray nobody touched. My name's Hollis Brandt, 60 years old, widower, and before any of this, I spent 26 years as a Navy hospital corpsman and biomedical equipment tech, the guy who keeps the machines that keep people alive, actually running. Whether you're on a carrier in the Gulf or a trauma ward in San Diego. After the Navy, I came home to Ohio and spent the next 12 years as Director of Clinical Systems Integration at Meridian Valley, a regional medical center serving about 4 counties of farm towns and Rust Belt suburbs that the big hospital chains never bothered with. I designed the platform that ran the place. We called it Lifeline. Not a flashy name, didn't need one. Lifeline routed power, oxygen, pharmacy dispensing, patient monitoring, and emergency overrides through one integrated spine, so that when the grid went down and out here, it goes down a lot. The ICU never knew the difference. I'd watched it hold during 3 ice storms and a tornado that took out half a substation in Coshocton. It worked because I'd spent 12 years making it work. That Thursday started like every Thursday. I had breakfast with my granddaughter, Nora. No, I won't use that. She'd kill me for getting sentimental. Let's just say my granddaughter at the diner on Route 9 where the waitress knows my order before I sit down. She's 17, sharp as a tack, applying to nursing programs because she watched her grandmother go through cancer treatment and decided that was the work that mattered. Over eggs and bad coffee, she asked me something I keep turning over in my head even now. Grandpa, what do you do when you know the right thing's gonna cost you? She had an interview coming up at Ohio State's nursing school, and she was nervous about the ethics questions. I told her the truth, which is that nobody can prepare you for those moments with talking points. You don't decide your character in the room, you decide it years before, in 1,000 small choices nobody ever sees, and then when the hard moment comes, you just find out what you already are. She wrote that down on a napkin, folded it into her backpack, told me I should put that on a coffee mug. I laughed and drove her to school and didn't think about it again until 11 hours later, when those exact words came back to me like a debt. When I walked into the executive suite that morning, I knew something was off because the blinds were drawn. Brennan Cole, our CEO of all of 14 months, brought in by the new board from a hospital management firm in Charlotte, was standing behind his desk instead of sitting, which is what men do when they're about to say something they've rehearsed and don't quite believe. He was 34, wore a vest, drank cold brew out of a mason jar like it was a personality. The board had hired him to right-size the cost structure and unlock asset value, which is the kind of sentence that sounds like English until you realize it means cut the people who know things and sell what they built. Hollis, have a seat, he said. No coffee offered. That was the tell. In 12 years, every hard conversation in that office had at least started with coffee. This one started with a closed door and a man who wouldn't quite look at me. Then the side door opened and the nephew walked in. I'll call him the nephew, because that's all he ever was in that building. The CEO's wife's sister's kid, 23 years old. And the first thing I noticed was that he was already filming. Phone up little gimbal stabilizer, the whole rig. He had a YouTube channel, 240,000 subscribers, I'd later learn, where he toured behind the scenes of real industries in ripped jeans and a beanie, narrating everything in that breathless influencer voice like the world had never seen a forklift before. His name was on the channel banner in a font shaped like a lightning bolt. I'd seen it once when Nora showed me a clip and asked if hospitals really look like that. They don't. This is so authentic, he said, panning the camera across the office. Guys, this is the original architect. This is going to be huge. Brennan cleared his throat. Hollis, the board wants to position Meridian Valley as a forward-facing brand. Healthcare is changing. We need to connect with younger demographics, show transparency, build trust through content. The plan is for you to bring Tanner up to speed on Lifeline walk-in through the system. Let him document it, build out a series. Behind the scenes at a real hospital. It's a huge opportunity for the institution. I waited for the punchline. There wasn't one. You want me, I said slowly, to train a YouTuber on the system that controls oxygen delivery and emergency power for 190 inpatient beds. The kid, Tanner, lit up. Oh, it'd be sick, right? Like imagine a live stream from the control room, real time, showing how the magic happens. My audience eats up authentic infrastructure content. We could do AR overlays on the monitors, maybe a guess the patient vitals segment. I'm not a man who raises his voice. 26 years in the Navy teaches you that the calmest person in the room usually wins. But something in my chest went cold and very, very still. The way Lifeline goes still. Lifeline isn't content, I said. It's the difference between a man in cardiac arrest getting defibrillated and a man in cardiac arrest dying because somebody posted a screenshot of our network topology and a stranger in another country figured out how to shut it off. Tanner laughed. He actually laughed. Dude, you sound like my dad. It's just a computer system. I built my whole studio setup myself. Lighting, streaming, the whole stack. How different can it be? That's the moment I knew Brennan had stopped living in the real world. Lifeline wasn't a studio setup. It was 12 years of redundancy and fail-safes wired into the bones of a building where people came to be born and to die. One bad config, one screenshot of the override hierarchy on a public live stream, and you've handed a roadmap to whoever wants to take a rural hospital hostage. And out here, where the next trauma center is 40 minutes away on a good day, that's not a data breach. That's body bags. I can't do that, Brennan. His voice dropped to that careful, quiet register that executives use right before they reach for the knife. Can't or won't. I thought about Nora and her napkin, about what character is and when you find out you have it. Won't, I said. Lifeline protects patients. It's not a marketing channel. I won't train a content creator to operate a system that keeps people alive, and I won't put my name on it. Brennan straightened up like he'd been waiting for me to say exactly that. Then, I think it's clear you're not aligned with where this institution is going. Your position is being eliminated, effective immediately. HR has your paperwork. Security will walk you out. You've got 15 minutes for your personal effects. The nephew was still filming. He swung the camera around to catch my face, that hungry little grin behind the lens narrating to his subscribers about old guard resistance to innovation. Here's what none of them knew. Not Brennan, not the board, not the kid with the gimbal. I'd been ready for this exact morning for 6 years. With my wife, Deanne. I'll say her name. She earned it when Diane got her cancer diagnosis 6 years back. Our insurance fought us on everything. Every scan, every drug, every specialist. I had a Navy pension and a director's salary, and we still nearly lost the house because that's what this country does to families when the worst happens. I sat in oncology waiting rooms doing math on the back of appointment cards. And somewhere in those rooms, I made myself a promise. I would never again let my entire life hang on the goodwill of an institution that saw me as a line item. So I did something quiet. Lifeline, in its earliest form, I developed as a contractor before I was ever a Meridian Valley employee, back when I was doing consulting work out of my garage with my brother Garrett, who'd done 30 years as an electrician's mate in the Navy and understood power systems better than anyone I ever met, the core architecture, the failover protocols, the patents on the integration logic, every piece of the actual engine that made Lifeline work would, filed under Brandt Critical Systems, LLC, with Garrett as principal. Meridian Valley had a license to use it. A good license. An ironclad one, but a license with conditions. And one of those conditions, buried in Section 9 where no MBA had ever read, was that the license held only so long as the original architect remained employed and in good standing. They'd voided it at 8:20 that morning, and Brennan had signed the termination himself. 2 security guards walked me down to my office. The older one, Reyes, had been a corpsman too. Did a tour in Fallujah. The younger one, Pruitt, was National Guard. In the elevator, I told them, quiet, exactly what was happening. That the board was lining up a private equity buyer. That they were about to put a child with a YouTube channel in front of the control room of a level 3 trauma center. Reyes just shook his head and muttered something I won't repeat in front of my granddaughter's future colleagues. Pruitt asked if there was anything they could do. I told them just to give me my full 15 minutes and to take their time walking me to the truck. I had some calls to make. My office looked the same as it had at 7 that morning, when I'd still been somebody. Photos of Nora at her soccer games. A picture of the original Lifeline team, 6 of us, working 20-hour days in a leased warehouse off Tuscarawas Street, eating cold pizza and arguing about redundancy paths. My corpsman insignia in a little shadow box. And the mug Nora gave me 2 Christmases ago. World's most stubborn grandpa. She knew me. But the only thing I needed was already in my jacket pocket. A flash drive that looked like every other flash drive on Earth, holding the original patent filings, the licensing agreements, and the administrative keys to a protocol I'd built so deep into Lifeline that nobody else even knew it existed. I called it Section 9 after the clause, a dead man's switch wired into the system's core. If the primary architect's employment status ever changed to terminated without a proper transfer of authority, Lifeline wouldn't break. It would simply lock its own deepest functions and wait patiently and definitely for the rightful owner to release it. No access, no rollout, no demonstration, until the ownership question got settled the right way. "Don't take anything that belongs to the company," Tanner said from my doorway, still recording. "My uncle says you people always try to steal stuff on your way out." You people. After 12 years. After 3 ice storms and a tornado and the night I drove in at 2 a.m. during the flood to keep the ICU online by hand. "Everything I need," I told him, patting my jacket, "is right here." I drove the truck 4 blocks to the parking structure across from the hospital and set up what my brother would have called a forward operating base. Laptop on the passenger seat, phone hotspot, coffee from the place on Route 9 going cold in the cuff holder. I logged into Lifeline through the back channel I'd built into it on day 1. And the screen greeted me the way it always had. "Welcome, System Architect. All systems nominal. Section 9 armed and ready." I checked the time. 8:51. Brennan's big modernization unveiling for the Ohio Department of Health auditors was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp. He'd have a conference room full of state inspectors and the Regional Hospital Association, there to evaluate Meridian Valley for a $4 million federal rural health infrastructure grant. The grant Brennan had staked his whole tenure on. The one that would let the board dress the place up and flip it to the private equity buyer for triple what they'd paid. I sat there a long minute with my finger over the key, and I want to be honest with you, because this is the part people argue about. I wasn't burning anything down. I want that clear. I didn't delete a file. I didn't corrupt a system. I didn't put a single patient at risk. Lifeline's actual life safety functions. The oxygen, the power, the monitoring, those stayed running exactly as designed, because I built them to never stop for anything. What I locked was the demonstration layer, the shiny new modernization rollout Brennan wanted to show off, the thing they were going to use to sell the place out from under the people who needed it. That part, and only that part, I let go quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from Marisol, my lead engineer, still inside the building. "They're prepping the conference room." "What's happening?" I typed back. "Watch the 10 a.m. demo close. Section 9 may activate. Brandt Critical Systems holds the keys now. Stay clear and don't touch anything." A pause then. I always wondered if that was real. "It's real," I told her. "It was always real." I pressed the key. The countdown began. 1 hour, 9 minutes. Invisible to every monitoring tool, Brennan's consultants had bolted onto the system because I'd built the watchers and I knew exactly where they weren't looking. Then I drove downtown to my lawyer's office, past the courthouse and the war memorial, to a man named Okonkwo who'd handled the Brandt Critical Systems paperwork years ago and had been quietly waiting for this call ever since. He met me at the door with a folder already on the table. "Hollis," he said, "I heard about your employment status." A small smile. "Shall we discuss your options?" We'd wargamed this for years. Every contingency, every angle. "The patent filings are airtight," he said, spreading documents across the conference table. "Every core innovation traces to the LLC. Meridian Valley has been licensing technology it never owned, under conditions that were violated at 8:20 this morning. The moment they walked you out, their right to operate the integration engine ended." "There's more," I said. "I've been talking to the Regional Health Authority, quietly, for months. There's a woman named Adeza Mbeki. She's run rural hospital systems evaluation for the state for 25 years, since before our CEO finished his MBA. She's been watching Meridian Valley. She knows what the board's really planning. When this morning hits the news, she's going to want to talk. At 10 a.m., the conference room 2 miles away had been turned into a stage. Marisol was texting me from a corner of it. 3 big screens. The remaining engineers standing at attention like they were launching a ship. Around the table, the state auditors, the grant committee, the hospital association reps, people with the authority to decide whether $4 million federal dollars flowed into Meridian Valley or didn't. And Brennan at the head of it, confident as a man holding cards he hasn't checked. Beside him, the nephew, live streaming the whole thing to 240,000 subscribers with a caption that read, "Modernizing my uncle's hospital, live number health tech, number disruptor, number future of care." "Ladies and gentlemen," Brennan began in that polished presentation voice, "what you're about to see is the future of rural healthcare delivery, a fully modernized, brand-forward, integrated platform built for the next generation of patients and providers." He nodded to the demonstration engineer, a kid, fresh out of school, hired to replace a man with 20 years of experience that Brennan had let go to save salary. He started typing. The screens lit up with Lifeline's initialization sequence, sharp and clean. For exactly 20 seconds it was perfect. Then the first error appeared, system architect authentication required. The kid frowned, typed faster. "Just a minor authentication issue, sir. Let me reset the connection." "Access denied. Employment verification failed." "What's the problem?" Brennan's voice had an edge now, the edge of a man whose script is going off the rails. "I'm not sure, sir. It's asking for architect-level credentials that aren't in our database." That's when my countdown hit 0. The screens flashed amber 3 times and then displayed a message that, Marisol told me later, drained the color out of Brennan's face like a plug had been pulled. Protective lockdown initiated. Lifeline core functions secured. Demonstration access revoked. Contact system administrator for resolution. The auditors exchanged the kind of look that people who've seen 100 contractors overpromise and underdeliver give each other across a table. Ade Zimbiki, she was there. Of course she was there. She'd made sure of it, leaned forward with the expression of a woman who just watched a very expensive bridge fail its load test. "Mr. Cole," she said in a voice I'd later hear described as the calmest, scariest thing in the room, "is there a problem with your system?" The silence in that room, Marisol said. You could have heard a heart monitor flatline. "No problem at all," Brennan said, and his voice cracked on the second word. "Just a routine security protocol. We'll have it resolved momentarily." He turned to the new kid. "Fix this, now." The kid's hands were shaking. "Sir, I can't access the core. There's something here labeled Section 9, but I've never seen this protocol. It's not in any documentation." "Section 9? What the hell is Section 9? Nobody in that room knew. That was the entire point. I'd buried it so deep that finding it would be like finding one specific grain of salt in Lake Erie. "Get Hollis Brandt on the phone," Brennan barked. "Sir, you terminated him this morning, per your direct order." "I don't care. Get him on the line." The call went to the voicemail I'd recorded that morning specifically for this moment. "Pleasant. Professional. You've reached Hollis Brandt. I'm currently unavailable. If this is regarding Lifeline system architecture, please consult your existing licensing agreements. For all patent and access inquiries, contact Brandt Critical Systems, LLC. Have a good day." Badea Zimbeki stood, gathering her materials with the slow deliberateness of a woman who has just decided exactly how she feels about something. The other auditors followed. "Mr. Cole," she said, "your core clinical infrastructure is inaccessible during a federal grant evaluation. Your marketing representative is live streaming our session to the public internet, and the only person who can apparently resolve this is the man you fired 3 hours ago. We'll be postponing this review indefinitely." "Wait, please, it's a minor technical." "Minor?" She let the word sit there. "Mr. Cole, this is a hospital. Nothing about your control systems is minor. That's rather the point." She walked out, and her team walked out behind her like a unit leaving a position that had been compromised. The screens went dark, and then one last message appeared in plain white letters. Lifeline in protective mode. All demonstration access revoked. For licensing inquiries, contact Brandt Critical Systems, LLC. Authorized representative, Garrett Brandt. Here's the part the kid did to himself, and I swear I didn't plan it. Tanner had live-streamed the entire collapse to 250,000 people. By noon, clips of Brennan sweating through his vest while a hospital control room locked him out were everywhere. Someone set it to circus music. Someone else made a 40-second supercut titled Nepotism Speedruns a Federal Audit. The kid had documented in glorious high definition the single most public administrative failure in the history of that institution, and he'd done it with his own phone, narrating his uncle's destruction in real time and calling it disruption. He wasn't wrong about that part. It was disruption, just not the kind he meant. By 4 that afternoon, I was sitting across a table from Daisy and Becky in a downtown office overlooking the river, and she was studying me over a cup of coffee. "Mr. Brandt," she said, "I have had an unusual day. In 25 years of evaluating rural health systems, I've never watched a control platform politely refuse to let its own hospitals sell it. Meridian Valley disappointed me." "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not." A faint smile. "And you shouldn't be. Meridian Valley is a building and a board and a man in a vest. What the state cares about, what those 4 counties of people care about, is Lifeline. And Lifeline, our legal team confirmed about an hour ago, was never theirs to sell." We talked until the light went orange on the water. By the time I left, the framework was sketched out. A new nonprofit clinical systems authority, Brandt Critical Systems as the technology partner, federal rural health funding routed directly to the people who actually kept the lights on, with the hospital's clinical staff, the nurses, the techs, Marisol, the people who never deserved any of this, protected in the transition. The board would wake up the next morning to discover that the asset they'd planned to flip had walked out the door in my jacket pocket. Brennan resigned within a week. I heard the nephew pivoted to a podcast about cryptocurrency. I wish him well. From a distance. They fired me at 8:20 in the morning for refusing to turn a life support system into a marketing stunt. By 4 that afternoon, the technology their entire grant was built on belonged, legally and finally, to the man they'd walked out with a security escort. That night I picked Nora up from her shift volunteering at the senior center and took her for pizza at the place we both like. I told her the whole thing, start to finish, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment, turning her soda cup in slow circles the way she does when she's thinking hard. "Grandpa," she finally said, "that's the answer to my interview question. How do you figure? You knew the right thing was going to cost you, and you did it anyway, and you were ready for what came after." She raised her cup to the world's most stubborn grandpa, who turned out to be smarter than all of them. I touched my cup to hers, and that, I think, was the best part of the whole day. Better than the lockout, better than the look on Brennan's face I never even got to see in person. Better than any of it. Because some things you don't decide in the room. You decide them years before, in 1,000 small choices nobody ever sees. And then one Thursday morning, you simply find out what you already are. The screen went quiet that Thursday morning, and I've spent a lot of nights since thinking about why a machine refusing to break felt more like justice than anything I could have done with my own 2 hands. Brennan didn't lose because I attacked him. He lost because of choices he made long before he ever met me, the choice to see a hospital as an asset to flip, to see 12 years of my work as a line item, to put a child with a camera in front of a system that keeps people breathing. Every one of those choices was a seed, and that morning the harvest just came due. I didn't plant a single one. I only refused to water them. That's the thing I'd want my granddaughter to understand, the thing I tried to tell Nora over pizza that night. Doing the right thing isn't one big dramatic moment. By the time Brennan said can't or won't, the decision was already made. I'd made it years earlier. In 1,000 small choices, nobody ever clapped for the nights I drove in at 2 a.m. during the flood. The corners I refused to cut. The promise I made to myself in an oncology waiting room with Diane that I'd never let my whole life hang on an institution's goodwill again. Character isn't what you summon in the room. It's what you've quietly built, day after unremarkable day, until the moment arrives and you simply find out what you already are. But being good isn't enough by itself, and I won't pretend it is. If I'd only been honest and let them walk me out empty-handed, Brennan would have sold that hospital and never looked back. What protected those 4 counties of people was the part of me that thought 3 steps ahead, that filed the patents under Garrett's name before I ever took the job, that built Section 9 and hoped to God I'd never need it. Goodness without foresight is just a man getting run over while doing the right thing. You have to be principled and clever at the same time. You have to know how the world actually works, not how you wish it did. And then you need the spine to wait. The hardest part wasn't pressing the key. It was the 6 years of carrying that switch and never using it, never bragging, never letting bitterness rot me from the inside while I did my job and waited for a day I prayed wouldn't come. Endurance like that doesn't feel heroic in the moment. It just feels like getting up and going to work. So if you take anything from an old corpsman from Ohio, let it be this. Be the kind of person who does right when it costs you. Be smart enough that doing right doesn't leave you defenseless. And be tough enough to hold the line for years before anyone ever notices. The screen went quiet that morning. But I'd been getting ready for it my whole life.